Joe Gorga and Teresa Giudice part ways at the RHONJ Season 13 reunion. Teresa Giudice and Joe Gorga scandal erupted on the Real Housewives of New Jersey Season 13 reunion Part 3. But rather than ending with a boom, the siblings' relationship ended in a whimper. After all the screaming, crying, and hurling accusations, Joe offered an amicable gesture, albeit a constrained one. Teresa turned it down, and the two siblings dissolved their bond after reaching a deadlock. Teresa Giudice and Melissa Gorga do not get along. That information is not brand new, only the specifics of their dispute and the allegations appear to alter. In Part 3, the two were shouting over one another so loudly that it was difficult to hear what they were actually saying. Honestly, most likely, we didn't miss much. He was caught in the between of the squabbling groups, which perfectly captured the feeling of helplessness, despair. Yes, as a host, that is his duty, but most of the time, he moderates the debates rather than merely putting up with a screaming match. There is little doubt that the spouses continue to be actively involved. RHONJ is involved, after all. The husbands participate significantly in the show and accompany their wives on the tell-all. Louis and Joe argued. However, sibling rivalry ended up being the main source of the conflict. Teresa informed Melissa that she will no longer speak to Joe after their Season 13 reunion. Her biological brother is Joe. That was startling enough for Melissa. She retreated in order for Joe and Teresa to finish their final comments while grinning angrily. Joe immediately said to his sister that this was a terrible thing for her to say. It's one thing to feel angry, another is breaking off ties. Even a close relative like a sister can be cut off for a variety of valid reasons. And this mess, it has gotten out of hand. Additionally, it is greatly exaggerated. In a furious outburst, Teresa claimed Joe had dragged her through the mud. How much time? For 10 years, she asserted. It became immediately evident that Teresa is still upset about the Gorgas joining RHONJ in the first place, and may have always been upset about it. That actually does seem to be Teresa's main source of conflict. In her mind, this was her thing. Maybe she thought of RHONJ as her domain. She believes that by combining, Joe and Melissa undermined or at least diminished this. Andy's attempts to maintain order and genuinely manage the conversation failed miserably. Andy, stop talking, Teresa snarled. She is a gaslighting BTCH, I say. That is, in all sincerity, plain improper speech. Even the part about Melissa is not what we mean. Actually, even that. Long ago, Louis blew his opportunity to experience the adoration of his cast members or spectators, most likely just by being himself. He appears to be hoping to be feared, nevertheless. Your day is coming, he mocked Joe. The spectators have become accustomed to hearing hazy, juvenile threats like this from Teresa's idiotic husband. Teresa, meanwhile, merely referred to Joe as disgraceful. She was alluding to him and his actions. Teresa also mentioned their departed parents frequently, using their names to imply that they would be embarrassed of him. Once more, microphones picked up Louis' efforts to sound scary. He mumbled behind Teresa, just a matter of time, Joe. It is only a matter of time. He does seem to be planning to harm Spider-Man in some way. Teresa got to her feet, ready to reprimand her brother. Overshadowing Andy Cohen, she lectured Joe and attacked him. She needed to be asked to sit down, and Andy had to gently nudge her away from him. Andy's poor. Teresa did ultimately start crying. She claims that during this entire time, she has been good to Joe. She now believes Joe deceived her, and that she is incapable of forgiving him or it. Teresa eventually stormed out of the tell-all. Regardless of your opinion of her behavior, her back does look terrific. She referred to Joe and the scenario as disgusting. Nobody was to follow Teresa, she wished. We initially assumed she was referring to producers. Of course, they would follow her while using a camera team. Teresa, though, was mentioning Joe. She doesn't want to see either of him or Melissa. She said that she doesn't want to work with Joe backstage. She is removing him from her hands. She exchanged words with Andy and Gia. For the record, Andy accepts Gia's account that she didn't inform Joe that Melissa was superior to him in terms of performance. However, there could have been a genuine misunderstanding. Thus, no one is telling the truth regarding this particular matter. Joe shared his anguish and shock that Teresa won't let go of her mindset with Teresa backstage. He cannot change her perception of him if he is the villain and her enemy. Eventually, Andy was successful in convincing Teresa to return to the reunion stage. I'm not going to say never. Joe reached out an arm to Teresa and said, "You're my only sister. I am furious with you. I am not happy with you. I'll love you forever," he assured her. Joe said, "If you were in a car accident tomorrow, I'd be racing to the hospital by your side. I'll pick you up if something happens if you're sick." "No," Terry yelled. "You honor me when I'm alive, not after I'm dead, as Daddy said. Now, honor me right now." She believes Joe isn't acting in that way. The two separated, and, it would appear, have not repaired the damage since they shot. The problem has actually gotten worse.